Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This episode is Lower Astral, the Last Fighter. Yes, I'm still currently stuck in the lower astral plane, but rather than bemoaning my fate, I'm exploring it and hopefully bringing you guys some interesting information about a seldom uh, seen area that perhaps is justly maligned, but it's still out there in the astral, and I think there's still information that can be of help to us. So I'm taking advantage of an otherwise difficult situation and bringing you hopefully some interesting content. Before we get started, I've got a couple new patrons. We have Van Lothox, who is an astral master, and Leon, who is an astral scout. If you'd like to join these two great people and all the other supporters of Astral Club on Patreon, just follow the link that'll be in the description, and you get your videos early on Tuesday rather than having to wait until Saturday. And you could also direct email me with your questions and comments and requests for tips or anything that I can help you out with. Okay, let's get started. Now, I have to be careful about a few of the words I talk about here because the other master, the tube, lets me know what I can say and what I can't say. So I'll do my best under the circumstances. So a few nights ago, I was in a hotel room on a business trip, and I was beginning to leave my body. And as I did, I was confronted by my angel friend. And as you might expect, I was a little surprised to find him at, uh, at a Hilton property. But there he was. And I was also quite relieved to see a friendly face in this current situation. Um, but then he said to me, "Hi, Rick, how are you doing?" Then I got really scared because he never said anything like that. He was always stone faced and showing up saying, "We gotta go." Now here he is showing the kind of face someone shows you when they go visit you in the hospital and they know you're not gonna live. So all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my goodness, am I gonna live? Am I dying? What's going on?" He quieted my fears and said, "No, no, no. I know you're going through a difficult time right now, and I want you to know I have some ideas as to how you can be helped, and I'm currently looking into that. I just I just need to get permission in order to use some techniques to restore you." And I said, "Well, if you need permission, you've got it. I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life." And he said, "Okay, yes, your permission is required, but that's not the permission I'm talking about now. I have superiors that I have to get permission from to do what needs to be done. It's not something that's easily done." And so I'm saying, so I said to him, "So there's even a bureaucracy there too?" He said, "Oh yes, there definitely is, and for what we have to try, it requires various permission." He goes, "I don't want to get into details now, um, but we will talk about it if I do get permission." Well, I considered that for a few seconds, and I realized that I wasn't going to change his mind, so I changed the subject. I said, "Hey, how are the people who escaped the cult?" And at that, he brightened and said that all the people who had wanted to escape escaped, including Ivan and his pals. He said, of course, that was partially due to your wonderful interference. And he said that the cult is actually very weak now, and that there are people who are leaving constantly now, and the master can't stop them because of his weakened condition. So obviously I was very happy about that news. So after he said his piece, he said goodbye and said that I'll be getting back to you as soon as I can, and then he disappeared. So there I was in my hotel room, and I said, "Well, I don't want to waste the projection. There's nothing more I can do here." So I went into orbit, and I saw the Middle East, and particularly Syria. So I decided to go down into that area and search out some vibrations that I might be able to help. And I found myself in a desert area that was very deserted. However, there was I could see groups of souls that were there who had passed over, but were still earthbound, going through some of their violent techniques that had led them to that place. As I was walking around, I saw a partially destroyed cottage, if you want to use that term. And in there was a man who was beating something. Now, I want you to understand that when I go into disputed areas, especially in the lower astral, where there's a wide variety of creatures and beings, I usually put on a long dark robe with a long hood. And sometimes I'll carry a staff with me. I find that this type of dress just scares people away and prevents me from having to deal with these individuals. It's just most folks will leave you alone when they see you wandering about in some of these bad neighborhoods, if you want to use that term, dressed in that long black robe. There's something about that figure that cuts across all cultures, and most folks will give you a wide berth. So I went walking into that partially destroyed hovel to see what exactly he was doing. And I could see that there was a woman underneath him who was taking this beating from this young man. Of course, I told him to stop immediately, and I gave a very strong command. When he turned to look at me, I was able to scan him very quickly, and I could tell that he had certain superstitions that people in the Middle East often do. There's a belief in what's called the jinn. The jinn are these creatures who are made from smokeless fire. They were made sometime around the time that humans were made by Allah, and they exist in another plane. Most of them are considered evil, although some of them apparently are known to be Muslim. At any rate, I surrounded myself in fire, and he took one look at me and he ran out the door. I looked down and I helped the woman up, and at first she was very frightened. Her eyes were wide when she was looking at me. So I stopped the fireworks and I pulled down my hood so she could see my face. And she was puzzled but relieved instantly. And I spoke to her gently and asked her what her name was. And she said her name was Jeelan. And by scanning her mind, I could see that she was Yazidi. Now, if you're not familiar with those people, they're an ancient people, and they existed in Mesopotamia for a long time. Today, in modern times, they mostly existed in northwestern Iraq. until around 2014 when Islamic fighters came into that area. And, well, we'll hear her story in a minute. So I spoke to her gently and she asked me if I was an American. I don't know, something about me, I guess, gave that away. And I said that yes. And then she looked around like, are there others? Are there other Americans coming? I said, no, it was just me. And I guess she wasn't quite sure that she had crossed over any more than the fighter who was beating her had noticed that. And I said, can you tell me what you remember? And she said that there was some sort of a fight and there was mortar rounds going off, and she and her husband were near that hovel, and then the lights went out, and then there they were. And she told me that she suspected that she was no longer alive, if only because the beatings that he administered to her, while they hurt her pride, didn't really hurt like they used to hurt. Now there's just, she told me, the memory of the pain, but without the actual pain. I asked her for her story, and she told me that when the Islamic fighters had come into her village in 2014, and I have to be careful how I describe this so this doesn't get in trouble with the tube. All of the men were killed. The women were molested. Let's use that term. Now, Muslims have some problems with Yazidis because they believe they're Satan worshippers. Now, the Yazidi religion is monotheistic. They believe that a god created the earth and then entrusted it to 7 holy beings, which we might call angels. And chief among those beings is something they call the peacock angel, or Melek Taus. And that being is confused with Satan or Shaitan by some Muslims. And so because of that, they've been mistreated over the years and persecuted. And so when these fighters came, they took the women they wanted as their wives, did away with the rest, and figured they could do whatever they wanted with them because they were Shaitan worshippers, and so they were therefore less than people and were deserving of absolutely no rights. So she had suffered unbelievably, and I couldn't possibly describe to you as we relayed messages with one another and I scanned her. She had gone through unbelievable cruelty, and like I said, I couldn't even describe it here because if I did, this video would be in trouble. So I told her that I was there to offer her help, and that I asked her, did she want to leave this place? And she at first was a little hesitant because this is my husband, but at the same time, I said to her, you realize that, what happened to you, and that in any realistic sense, he's not any kind of husband. And besides, you've passed over, and you realize that. So any earthly contracts are now severed. So it wasn't very hard to convince her, believe me. With that, I told her to clear her mind. Now, I couldn't help her. In the past, I've been able to be with them in a mental sense and help them attract the light, but I can't do that now. So all I could really do was help her get started and told her what to do. And as she got calm and I could see her features just became so much lighter and so much more beautiful and calm. that she then just disappeared. And I have to believe that she went to a much better place than the hell that she was in. Well, once Jeelan disappeared, I put my hood back up again and started the fire, the fireworks, I call them, all over my robe. So I looked like I was on fire and continued to walk through this camp. I didn't care if I scared any of these individuals. As I walked around, some were cleaning their weapons. There was some sort of leader who was giving a talk to these black clothed recruits, telling them how they had to sacrifice even more for the cause of Allah. And I couldn't help but shake my head. I mean, they'd pretty much sacrificed everything they had, and this guy still wanted more. So, okay. But as I was walking about this camp, I saw over in the corner there was this young man who was a fighter, and he was crying quietly to himself. So I went over to him, and before he looked up, I got rid of my hood and got rid of the fireworks. I didn't want to scare him because I, obviously sensed that he was in a much more delicate state. And I kind of got down and sat next to him. And he looked over at me, and I mean, he must have been so depressed that he didn't even really react as I would think he might react to what I must have looked like. And I said to him, what is your name? And he said that his name was Yusuf. And I asked him, why was he here? Why was he crying? He said that he had come here with 3 of his friends, and they were going to, fight for Allah in a holy war. And all he found here was death and disease and starvation and so much evil. All of his friends had died, and I guess he wasn't quite aware that he had eventually followed them, and that he had much regret for the evil that he had done, in the name of this cause. And I could see in his mind just a sampling of some of the violence and destruction that he had had a hand in causing. Now, he wasn't a leader by any means. He was just a follower. Not that that excused him, but this is a young man. I don't think he was more than, when he passed over, I don't imagine he was more than 18. And he had gone over there, he'd been over there for a few years. And I said to him that he didn't need to fight anymore, that the fight was over. And with that, he was deeply affected. He nodded his head, put his rifle off to the side, and I could see the relief in his features as he pushed it away from him. And I said to him, do you wish to leave this place and go to a much better place? He said that he did, but he was fearful. He said he'd been promised many virgins waiting for him if he died in the cause, but he no longer believed that. He no longer believed he deserved, even if there was such a reward, he no longer believed that he was deserving of that. and he was a little fearful of the judgment that might be waiting for him. I told him that I think he would find that the judgment was fair and that his heart would be tested. And I think, based on what I saw, that he was someone who could be salvaged. So I told him what he needed to do, and it took him a few minutes, but eventually he disappeared as well. Well, I decided to return to my body at this point, and I woke up in this Hilton property. So that was this experience. So at least I know that something I already knew. I mean, you guys have been great. You guys have been extremely supportive of me, and I had faith that there were other forces at work helping me as well, and I now know that that is definitely the truth. So we'll see what's in store for the future. At any rate, if you like this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have those of like minds you think might be interested in this video, why don't you go ahead and send that to them. And please leave your questions and comments. I find them extremely interesting. I know others do as well. And of course, if you want to support us on Patreon, it's very appreciated. And the link is in the description. So once again, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.